I'm coming along now with this orange color, and I'm just going to kind of put it along the bottom here, all the way. And I'm going to use a bit of my water in my medium, which is here, to make my paint flow a little bit better. So I'm finding that it's sticking a bit more than I'd like. Okay. So just similarly along this branch, I'm going to come along the bottom of it and just start putting in some of the color. Grab a bit of the purple. I'm not going to wash my brush, I'm just going to go ahead with that. And I can see that the top of this branch here is where it's really dark. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. So when I drag my purple through my burnt orange, it actually, you can't see it very well from probably where you're at, but the two together makes a really neat brown. So I'm going to just go ahead and mix some of that right now by mixing my purple right into my burnt orange. And I'm going to put that right along the very edge. It actually almost looks black. Okay. And here, because of where the light is hitting this branch, this part of the tree almost looks completely black. So I know that that's how the photo looks, but I'm not going to do it that way in the finished painting, but for now I'm going to just follow what the photo shows, with the exception that I'm going to leave this orange on the bottom, because I think that it looks more realistic if you do that. And I'm going to now put in the shadow here on this branch and continue working up on this one. So one of the things with a big painting like this is it can be pretty intimidating to get started. But I do find that once I get past this initial phase of laying everything out, it starts to get more fun. So I think don't be intimidated by size. And one thing that my art teacher, Janice Robertson always said to me was, if you're going to do a big painting, you need big brushes. So go and buy yourself one or two large brushes. It'll save you a lot of time, and it will make the painting process a lot more fun. I also feel that the larger the brush you use, the more out of control you are with the shapes you're making, which I think makes your painting a lot more free-flowing, and also a lot more kind of interesting to look at. Okay, so there's definitely a lot more work to do with these branches, but I think I'm going to not do all of them now. I'm going to come and paint a lot of them in later. But I am going to try to, with what purple paint I have out, go over them all, at least the big shaped ones, once. And then when I come and do the leaves later, and the small twigs and branches, I'll paint those over top. But I'm mindful that behind my branches is my sky. And as much as I'm painting this in a way where I'm actually painting something that's in front and then doing the background, which is okay to do that, by the way. I'm going to do that next to my branch. And the reason I'm doing it that way is I want to have a little bit of the red showing between my branch in the sky, because I like to have a little bit of that underpainting showing. If I just painted this whole sky blue, I would lose that. But that's a personal choice. I know some artists probably look at that and go, no, that's not right. But it's a personal choice. I think it depends on what you're going for. This painting that I'm doing, I know the style that that is being asked for, so I know what they want, and I know kind of they're looking for something that's a little bit more artistic in that way, and not necessarily photorealism or true to life. So now I'm taking a bit of my purple and I'm just trying to get in some of the dark areas here in the rocks. So these are areas where probably at some point I'll use black, but for right now, since I have a lot of purple, I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. And painting rocks is something that I've definitely struggled with, and I think a lot of fellow artists out there will tell you that to make rocks look realistic can be very, very tricky. But the thing that you need to do, at least in my opinion, is lots of layers, and you need to just be patient with it. And you can always paint over things, you can tint them later. There's lots that you can do. Okay. So now I'm going to get my third color, which I'm going to use. And this is the quinacridone Azo Gold. And I'm going to end up using this one mixed with a bit of white as well for my trunk. So this color, when you put it out, it ends up looking kind of brown tan color, but when you water it down, it ends up looking a lot more like a yellow, almost like a kind of a sunflower yellow. Now some of you are probably looking at this purple and saying, "Oh, I don't know where she's going with that." I'm just trying to put a bit of interest in the trunk here with colors that are pulled from the main color. So I took my purple, I just added a bit of titanium white, and I'm just putting a little bit of a stripe or highlight through here. Now I'm going to take my quinacridone Azo Gold, and I've mixed that in with a bit of my lavender that I just made, and I'm going to put that in as well. And when I'm painting, what I'm doing is I'm looking at my photo for where I see a value that is similar to the value that I've just mixed, and I'm just putting it in. And I'm not really worrying so much about whether it's exactly the same or close enough. I find that when I do this over and over, eventually you end up with what you're looking for, but it's not an exact science. Now I'm going to take my quinacridone Azo Gold and mix with a bit of white, and this gives me a really nice bright highlight, which I can see right about there, and I'm going to add that in. And I know that some of these highlights are going to have to be more white, but for right now I'm just going to try to get some of the color on, and I'm going to worry about the value of the color later. So right now, if you look at this painting, it's kind of all mid-tone. It's because I'm mixing it mostly just from the pure paint that's coming out of the tube. Later, when I want to make the painting look more realistic and interesting, I'm going to mix white with a lot of my colors to add some highlights. And I'm going to mix possibly black or blue or purple with some of the other colors to give me my lowlights. But right now, I'm just trying to get a rough idea of where things are. Okay, so back to the quinacridone burnt orange. And I just mixed that with a bit of white, and it actually makes this really pretty kind of salmon color. Now this tree in real life truly was a mix of colors. It wasn't just brown, and it did have purple and tan and yellow. It was a mix of color. So this is actually more what I remember the tree looking like as well as partly how I'm painting this. Okay, so you can start to see that we're getting some interesting colors in here. I've left this over there. I think what it needs, looking at it, is it needs a bit more of a darker value along the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that in. Even though in my photo that's not there, the eye kind of needs that, I think. So sometimes, remember, your reference photo is only a reference photo. It's not what you have to do in your painting. I'm trying to make sure that I leave little gaps of the pink. So I left some of it there. I've left some in other places. I'm trying to let it poke through a little bit here and there. Okay, so now I'm gonna start by painting my sand with some of the colors that I have. So I've already got a lot of white, so I'm gonna take white. I'm gonna mix it with my burnt orange, and I'm gonna mix it with some of my quinacridone azo gold, and it gives this really lovely color. Sometimes what I do is I'll hold my paint up to my photo to see how close I am, and I can see here that this is too white, but it actually looks pretty close to the sand in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And then I'm going to just take whatever is left on my brush and put it in here. Okay. And then I'm going to add a bit of white right into the wet paint to put the highlight there. This is kind of like wet and wet painting, where you are mixing colors almost directly on the canvas. And I can tell by looking at this, I'm going to have to do this again later, because it's not the value that I'm looking for. That's almost like much like a white to black, and I'm not getting that contrast yet. But on this end, I'm not worried about that right now. Just going to try to get all the shapes in. So I can see that I kind of missed part of this log here. So I'm just going to put a shape here. And it comes out like that. And I think I'm probably going to need to have two brushes here, one for my purple values and one for my oranges and whites. I'm going to get another brush, and this is a nice big brush. Let's try that. Okay. So when I painted this last time, I did it in what's called a diptych, where you paint it in two sections, and it was very fun to do. It's a cheaper way to do paintings because the canvases that are then smaller are cheaper, and it's easier to transport. So I just did that last time, not because I had planned it, it's just what I happened to have at home, and I wanted to use up the canvas that I already had. Okay, so now I'm going to start coming with my sand here, and yeah, this color isn't perfect, but it's pretty close. I'm gonna start, and then I'm gonna look at it and see. I think it actually needs a little more white, and it needs a little more pink. So I'm gonna add more white to it, and I'm gonna add a bit of my quinacridone. I also have magenta. So I've just put a bit of the magenta from my my palette, and I've added a bit of cadmium yellow as well. This might be closer. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. So with this, I'm going to paint it in big swaths, and I'm just going to try to get all the paint off the brush here, and I'm going to leave bits of the pink showing through. And one of the things that I almost always do, and I never seem to learn my lesson, is I don't mix enough paint. So I just used up what I had on my canvas there, and it didn't get me even halfway across. But that's okay, I'm just gonna mix more. And I remember how I did it. One of the things you can do as well is add a bit of water glaze to the paint that you have on your tray, just to lift it off and try to use it up.